Father was they got
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, no, no. Don't worry, we have not been kidnapped by the Russian state and converted. That cold open was just some footage that I played in reverse because I think that it's actually kind of hilarious. It sounds really wild, especially you, Omar.
I do what I can.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is. The timbre of your voice just hits really like really right in reverse. Anyway, welcome to the CyberDudes podcast. It is yet another episode. I am Robin Thornton. Joining me is Omar Sangarima. And how are you doing this week, Omar?
Excited for American playoff football.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't track it. Who's in
I'm just getting together with friends. That's really what more I'm excited for. It's just we're gonna eat really great food,
cool.
Hang out, shoot the shit. I know the Detroit Lions lost last night, and that was a heartbreaker. I was rooting for them just as a story for the season, and also, Detroit could use a win, but
Detroit in general could use a win.
Just the city itself, exactly. They haven't.
Yeah.
I one of my favorite players from way back in the day was, and he retired early because he was sick of playing in Detroit and wasting his talents. But I consider Barry Sanders as my favorite, at least. Other people will debate me as to whether he was the best running back. His style was always just magnificent for me to watch. He would make people miss in absurd ways. Like if you look at his highlight reel, it's just like that looks like somebody playing Madden in real life. Just his style of elusiveness. And he gave up. He had to. Like he was just sick of getting beat up and carrying that team on his shoulders. They were horrific for as long as I could remember, and they've started to be good. They got pretty deep. They had a great record in the regular season, and Washington just took them out. So it was tough blow.
Yeah. Sounds a little bit like Harry Kane, except that he didn't retire. He just went to Bayern Munich for 100 mil. But also, in contrast there, Spurs have not got good. They are currently losing 3-0 to Everton, which is hysterical.
Yes. It really, honestly, if you follow true football at all, that is pretty funny. Like I'm chuckling, like holy shit. Yeah.
Absolutely wild. And then, as we were discussing pre-recording, Chris Wood potentially in contention for the Golden Boot. Enormous upturned trapezium on legs. It's just I don't even know. He does not fit the mold of the striker that you would expect at the top of the goal scoring charts in the modern era. But hey, enough of that. This is a cybersecurity show.
Yes.
So let's dive into the news and let's do it. Let's try and do
We're gonna bring it punchy.
Somewhat punchier than last time because that got really out of hand. What have we got to kick us off?
I just enjoy talking to you. I'm sorry, my apologies.
No, likewise.
No,
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
it can get quite difficult to cut down to something that
it does. I know. I get it. So first off, dark reading brings us employees enter sensitive data into Gen AI prompts far too often, and in other news, water is wet.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. It's a terrible idea. It's awful. This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I think people tend to get absent-minded about what sensitive data is whenever they're doing that. Or at least I would, if ever I've done it, which I hope I haven't, it's been purely accidental. Sure. But I will agree with you. There's a big old cohort of people who probably have absolutely no idea of the potential dangers and ramifications of this and how much information fed into these models can sort of bifurcate and proliferate, and then before you know it, everybody's social security numbers, well, they're already out there anyway. Yeah. But are in lots of places that they shouldn't be.
100%. You can eventually tease it out which is the danger. You put it in,
Yes.
and then you can these models can be tricked to spit it out with some nifty prompt engineering. So please, bottom line, stop. Just stop.
Unless you know it's your own private local version, yeah, absolutely no. Don't put sensitive data into to public AI models. Bad idea.
100%.
What else do we have?
In other water is wet news, U.S. sanctions North Korean IT worker network supporting weapons of mass destruction programs. This is brought to us by our friends at the Hacker News. And dear readers, the biggest takeaway I want you, the worker network, that phrase is the key thing here, because there are shell companies and there are complicit people and there are useful idiots, and it all amounts to a big network of fuckitude that funds
New favorite
bombs, really, and that bonds that funds bombs being made by somebody that you don't want having the ability to send bombs anywhere. Please stop and maybe verify your workers. However, I will say in a counterpoint, forced RTO is also not the way to go to solve this. So please stop using this as a trope for saying that's why you need to have people come in, because you can't verify who the hell you're hiring.
Oh, return to office. My IT brain went recovery time objective.
Sure. No,
what we're talking about.
True. My apologies. But yes, return to office.
Yeah, I think it's it really drives home the nastiness of that regime when you consider. So I've started rewatching a British series called Spooks about MI5, and one of the earlier episodes is about basically it involves a nerve agent called VX, and they do quite a good description of some details changed of what this stuff is. It's kind of sticky, oily. It's not very volatile, so it's very, very dangerous. Wherever it was dispersed to, he had his brother
like
killed.
Something else. Sorry.
It's oh god. Ew. Get your head out of it.
Hey.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. Depending on where you put it.
Christ. But very nasty substance. Not very volatile. So hangs around wherever it's dispersed. Causes a real danger that way. Killed his brother within 15 minutes. It gets into, and its lethal dose is about 10 milligrams. Gets into the nervous system, basically stops your axons firing, so you just asphyxiate to death because your chest, you can't actually breathe. Like your muscles just go, not doing it anymore, because your brain can't get the signals, your central nervous system can't get the signals to do contract, release, and you die. And apparently the antidote to it is itself a very toxic substance. So it's kind of lesser of two evils. But yeah, nasty people. Nasty men.
Awful. All right.
And third of our short ones.
It's going to be a report by the good folks at Security Magazine. And but more shout out to IONS for being the underlying set of researchers. The role of the CISO is expanding. So I'll say, so please put some respect on their name.
Yeah, I don't look. What does it say is expanding out to? Like
a bit more boardroom and true executive level status versus being called the chief something and you only get to drive a toy car. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is better because initially it kind of read like, oh, we're going to throw more stuff under your purview that you don't need because you're kind of already overworked and have too much responsibility and not enough.
Well, there's that part too.
Clout.
There's that part too, but at least now you're getting a seat at the table.
Well, that's it. Yeah, it's yes, fine, I'll take some extra stuff, but if you actually start taking me seriously and CEO listen to me directly rather than going through the CIO as if I'm just some sort of lackey in IT.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair point. And now you have for us something White Housey, which is interesting, and it's less of an article. It's a press release from whitehouse.gov.
The actual
interesting, given the by the time this comes out, the almost presently happening flip of an administration. So
Sure.
take it away.
So hopefully it is a peaceful one. I just want to throw that out there, the changeover in administration. Now, a lot of these communiques out of the outgoing Biden administration kind of felt like bittersweet codas. This one as well. So you have an executive order on strengthening and promoting innovation in the nation's cybersecurity. I just pray that it doesn't evaporate or get nuked by another executive order in the coming days. However,
2-3
the
days.
spice, yeah, exactly. The spiciness, though, for me, is the straight up naming China as one of the reasons why we have to strengthen our infrastructure and our stance on the nation's cybersecurity. So, shout out there. Considering that the incoming administration has so many China hawks in high-ranking positions, I don't feel that at least that aspect of it is going to get tinkered with too much. Maybe the execution, or potentially, as wacky as we've heard, and I think we've talked about it on the show, there's actually some folks coming in going, we need to hack back and we need to impose more costs on China hacking us. So that's also terrifying, which is, again, maybe going too far in the direction of being tough on crime, I guess. Whatever the digital version of Rough McGruff would be. I'm not quite sure if we have one. Maybe Clippy in a trench coat. But this thing
Rough
out
McGruff,
here,
you just make me think of Feathers McGraw from Wallace and Gromit.
I mean, they're that similar. I
Who is
could
Rough
see
McGruff?
Rough
This is a
McGruff.
cultural reference that's not
Oh,
translated.
see, there you go. I think Rough McGruff was.
Is
think
it the
it was
barking
Dare.
crime dog?
Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was Dare, or I don't know if it was just straight up but it was a really mean looking dog in a trench coat. That would talk about crime. So it really, it kept me from doing crime till about like 10. So executive
And then
order
after 10,
on,
you just went wild.
I went nuts. All right. Double digits meant we're going for it. So executive order here, another piece that it outlines is, and I like the way that it did this. It outlines, hey, we're going to start finally doing a cyber trust mark. We should, hold more developers accountable for putting out shitty software. It shouldn't be a negative externality. And the way that instead of going, no, this is terrible, this is awful, the more practical tactic of we're just going to vote with our dollars in terms of what the government's going to buy, which I think is a good masterstroke when it comes to an actual heavy and immediate lever on affecting legitimate change. Because I'll tell you, with a lot of the regulatory frameworks that even we work in our day jobs, we're either straight up from that realm of the government says this is what you got to do to get government funds, and then everybody sort of kind of adopted it, or lessened versions of those originating documents, which were, again, if the government's going to spend dollars, this is the game you have to play. I think that, we see it also as a side note with CMMC going live this year soon. It's really, when regulations are tied to opportunities for making money or losing money to the private sector pays a heck of a lot more attention for obvious reasons. So I like the combination of those two aspects there. Gives me more hope that this, at least the spirit of it, is going to be a bit more long-lived.
Yeah, that does echo something that has been done in the UK as well. So the National Cybersecurity Centre, and I think there's been something done in concert with GCHQ there as well, which is British NSA effectively. It's called Cyber Essentials, and if you do want to do work with the government, you have to have Cyber Essentials because they want you to know that you are going to protect their shit. Whenever
same in
have
Australia,
data
right? With the
government,
the 8 or whatever that they shout out, right? Like when the government votes with its pocketbook, people listen.
Yeah. No, I mean there is because I have seen some dissenting opinion in the last week or two on things like SOC and stuff like that. In that, there's box ticky elements to it. This doesn't really do much. It's a bit performative. It doesn't have an awful lot of piece to it, and it ends up just being a
Theater.
what's the word? Theater, yeah, and how do I put it? Yeah, this is the way, and just a cost center, and for like time and attention as well, because it
Sure.
costs to get it. You got to, I mean, the regulatory body that does it is like you got to pay them somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 or something like that, just
Yep.
for it, and then you have to have the
For the
expertise.
assessor. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So it's that kind of thing. So it's, I think the real nub of this is, if you're gonna do this if you're going to be in a central authority, if you as a government, and you're going to do this, you're going to make sure that it is meaningful and people aren't going to consider it a waste of time.
Enforced correctly, I feel like the teeth need to come out when, not just for nitpicky ticky-tack bullshit where you don't check a box, but it has to come out with, you may have checked a box, but the spirit of what we're trying to do, you completely miffed on to cut corners, and we're going to bang you for that. If you have a couple of those sorts of big headliney, splashy sorts of cases, then you start seeing, I think, the private sector or anybody that wants to engage and sell services to the government, and hopefully on downwards, you start seeing real change there. So you're absolutely correct, Robin. There needs to be, this is one half of it, and it's still a tenuous half of it, considering, you know, what the political landscape's going to look like. And then the other half has to come in and enforce it in what I would consider, I'm going to get very normative, which I usually stay away from, but the right way to enforce this. There is a wrong way. As you said, SOC went in, and a lot of times it's a dog and pony show because they're checking boxes. There's some concerns, the same thing with what I just mentioned with CMMC, where folks are doing like back of the napkin calculations, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And folks, understandably so, are going, how in the blazes is a small or medium business going to do this? You're essentially forcing out the little guy because we just don't have that sort of coffer to bring to the table.
And that's where I think you've got to have the pragmatism again from the, I mean, you talk about it from the enforcement side and the perspective of make sure that it's not just bullshit for the sake of bullshit, but also when it comes down to somebody coming in, somebody from the authority coming in, doing an assessment, and not naughty little lady.
Hey,
she is making noises.
Okay, I'm just glad it wasn't directed my way.
Recording.
That would have been awkward.
No. That will most certainly will get picked up in the recording. But it's when you've got somebody from the sort of regulatory body, or whoever it may be, coming in and taking people to task on very specific things that in practicality don't actually matter. They may be applicable, they may apply for other organizations, and so within the spirit of the regulation or the standards, that they should be there. But when it comes down to the specific context of your business, it absolutely doesn't matter. But then them still slapping you with it when doing something in that topic area or whatever it may be will make no material difference, but still take an awful lot of time and resources. It's like you got to have the people like that using the discretion.
Yes.
In terms of what is sensible.
Yep. So a tiered approach would be, the image that keeps popping in my head is, when you're looking at like the CIS, right, top 18, I think now, no longer top 20, but they have implementation tiers of, if you're trying to at least hit the lowest rung, here are the bare essentials, the most bang for the buck things that you can do to harden technology, software, hardware, what have you. And here, the absolute brass tacks practices that matter the most. If you want to start going for the gusto and hitting levels 2 and 3, right, I could see some framework of that nature tied to revenue, tied to the size of your business. And then at least if there's some semblance of cogent thought in terms of where those breakpoints for the tiers are, then you can get over the hump of, this is just going to cost us too much, we're not going to do anything. Because the last thing you want is small and medium businesses throwing up their hands and going, this cyber shit's, for the rich folk. And then we're back where we started, or even worse afterwards.
Yeah. Makes me think you're really in the territory there of it's a similar argument to, or similar counter argument to the idea of like the federal minimum wage at like $20 or
Sure.
15, $20 or whatever it may be, because there are some legitimate concerns that there are smaller
Of course.
businesses that would be like, I can't do that, I can't deal with that
Sure.
shock right now. But I don't think the answer is simply to say, oh, well, it's a complete non-starter. You just can't, like, it'll never work. Just don't do it. It's like, well,
exactly.
I mean, it's definitely, you can definitely do it at Walmart and a Target and a McDonald's, etc., etc., etc. The local hair salon down the road or something like that. I mean, okay, let's talk about how we scale things.
Sure.
And
then
make
almost,
changes in a gradual manner so that everybody kind of like can adjust to them.
And you're almost reintroducing competitiveness at that point, right? Because then the age-old story of the big guy coming in and forcing out the little guys, you could potentially have an argument to be made for, it levels the playing field a hair more, right? Where maybe that local hair salon doesn't have to pay the 20, 25 an hour that like a Supercuts would. Right? I'm trying to go with the hair salon idea here, right? That a big chain would, and then potentially you start reintroducing maybe a little bit more, revenue and market space for those small folks. Again, without allowing them to then abuse those workers. Same thing here, where you're not just going to throw your hands up and say, "Well, this cyber stuff's too nuts." I'm talking about basic brass tacks. Like if you can put MFA in, for the love of God, put it in. There's cheap and scalable ways to do that, even for a small business. Yeah. Things of that nature, that's big bang for the buck type stuff. Put that in tier 1.
I mean, the easiest, cheapest way of doing that, quite frankly, you don't even necessarily have to have a formal implementation of it. You have it in policy. You say you need to have MFA on your logins. You set it up yourself, and it won't be managed centrally. But we need to see, and you spot check every now and then. Just be like, hey, can you show me your MFA, and that you're logging in that way. Anywho, let's move on. My big story piece, less of a specific story, although there'll be a bunch of them flying around. I will pull something out, but it's kind of the thing that nobody's any real stranger to at the moment. TikTok has shut off this weekend.
No. Oh no.
I won't say I'm pleased about it, but I'm certainly not sad.
Don't take my eyes. Take my eyes, but not my TikTok.
So, and we've trod this over and over again numerous times, but I wanted to take, it felt like a good opportunity to reiterate a few things, specifically kind of the reasoning, the national security reasoning, especially since that you said, this White House exec order on strengthening, promoting innovation in the nation's cybersecurity specifically does point at China and the way that they operate in cyberspace at a geopolitical level with espionage, be it corporate or government. And there are real concerns here. I think the whether there's an awful lot of debate that keeps flying around of like, oh well, it's not very well substantiated. People haven't come out with any like hard evidence. And I kind of, when you're talking about risk, I don't think you always need absolute hard evidence of something from that perspective. You just need the possibility or probability, the plausibility of something like this kind of happening. It's the argument of you could use the argument of I don't want to go in that particular bit of ocean because I don't want to get attacked by a shark. Oh, well, have you ever been attacked by a shark? Well, no. It's like, well, then you don't know that you're going to get attacked by a shark. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to risk it. That's the point.
Exactly.
So, and that's where it comes into that. And the thing that I have said is, it is absolutely not good for the citizens of Five Eyes Alliance states to be basically hooked on an app whose corporate structure ultimately traces back to swearing fealty to the government of a hostile regime, especially one that is among the top 5 nations in the world for cyber warfare. That's not a good position for anybody to be in. I'll repeat the thing that I've said in the previous episode. As an American or a Brit or an Australian or whoever else, Xi Jinping does not care about you. He cares about his subjects. In fact, actually, probably just cares about his own fiefdom. Not even really that much about. Not even that much about the 1 billion to Chinese folks that he looks after. Looks after in loose terms. And
he spies on. Yeah.
Big spies. So I just think, and there's a lot of different arguments around this as to. And again, these are things that are not grounded in any particular evidence. The counter arguments aren't grounded in evidence. Oh, it's censorship. Well, personally, no, I would disagree there. For one, because freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. You're not being punished or persecuted for saying the things that you say on TikTok. You can still say those things. You can shout them into the void. Nobody is under any obligation to amplify your message across tens of thousands of miles to hundreds of millions of people. Then nobody has any obligation to listen to you either. So that's my argument against that. But also, where is the hard evidence of it being a measure of censorship, as to say, sorry, we say to Apple and Google, we do not want you to serve this app on your app stores. The app still works, or the app still operates, it still opens, it doesn't show any information now, or it shows a message that says, well, we've taken down our servers because there's no point in us running it if nobody can get to it, or if nobody's going to be using it in the longer term. And I think that is a bit of a political move by TikTok, because there's nothing that's stopped them keeping the service up.
Sure.
But they've cut it off now as to make it look like, oh, it's the censorship ban. And I don't agree with the censorship ban either, because the whole argument around all of that is to say, oh, well, TikTok's the only platform that's showed us in any way, shape or form what's going on in Gaza. I don't use TikTok. I have no interest using TikTok. I'm under no illusions about what's going on in Gaza. The idea that you only know what's really going on in Gaza if TikTok is around is absurd.
Yeah. It's not the hill to die on, I think. And as you said, it's a ploy, because what they're hoping for is that with the deal-making administration coming in, they can find a way to wheel and deal and maybe get back on. I think that's one piece of it. Another piece that's really concerning to me is that, lo and behold, folks are flocking to yet another Chinese app, RedNote, which, folks, the whole point is not that, and I'm under no illusions, because a lot of people coming in and arguing against this, as you said, on, this is censorship, it's free speech. Don't other companies do it too, right? If you're on Facebook, if you're on any of those platforms, any meta platforms.
I'll have a bit here about the whataboutery of it. So
sure,
we can get that into that in a second.
100%. But this is specifically the infrastructure of companies that China has set up, where they dangle this billion people market, but you have to do it in a joint venture fashion, is diabolically brilliant on that side of the fence, because you can't touch this, right? In my terrible Borat voice, you can't get this, but if you do, right, all of your IP is gonna get jacked. All of your source code, all of the 11 herbs and spices are going to get absolutely, completely copied. And eventually one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get forced out, or your margins are going to get dropped down, because then there's going to be 7 other competitors. Now, mind you, Bezos does this on Amazon, where once he sees things that are selling, he has private label bullshit come in, and then suddenly the mama. So it's not that it's the evil Chinese person is doing this. No, it is a regime that specifically set this up in order to be the arbiters of what goes on and what doesn't go on. We in the West, ostensibly, now in reality, we could argue, but I don't want to, right? Not today. We could argue that truly that it's similar things. I understand that, but as you stated, Robin, very very succinctly, very nicely, that regime is really good at cyber warfare, and it's declared itself many times over as an enemy to certain regimes, as you said, the Five Eyes, the West, what have you. So if the old saying, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them. So my thing with this is, yes, if you want your data go, I agree, privacy is king. You shouldn't have your data going anywhere. But brass tacks, at the very least, don't funnel it to a regime that is an avowed enemy of where you live.
Yeah,
Period.
precisely. And
story.
my notes here on the whataboutery piece is, so Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You could argue to a certain extent Amazon, because there's the Temu and Shein,
Sure. Of course,
parallel to be drawn there as well. There's the musings as to whether this kind of action is also going to be levied at those e-commerce platforms. But I say, do the American platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, I refuse to call it X. Do they collect and sell creepy amounts of data about the people who use their services? Yes, absolutely. But are they legally bound to yield to any and all whims of an autocratic foreign government, in the same way that TikTok is through ByteDance, who has to comply with Chinese national security law? No. Facebook, Twitter, Google / YouTube can tell the Chinese government to go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
The key difference there is where your loyalties lie and what jurisdictions you are subject to. And the EU has banged up TikTok for the data privacy stuff year before, 2023, because they were caught doing explicitly the thing that they explicitly said that they would not do, which is take EU subject data back to China. And that's not allowed, because the EU says, sorry, no, it's not allowed to leave European borders. It must be domiciled here if it is about EU subjects. So they clearly don't really give all that much of a hoot about the other sovereign nations or trading blocs, rule of law. And so I have little sympathy for the company and the people who are very, very broken up about it potentially going away. I have another group I have minimal sympathy for as well. Anybody who has, and this is going to sound a little bit callous to begin with, but any small business who thinks that their entire business is going to go away overnight because literally all of their marketing and sales funnel was on TikTok, that is your dumb fault for not going multi-channel and not building, and this is a cyber point, for not building resilience into your business processes. If you have been solely on TikTok, and that is fine, it's where your growth came from, but if you did not put in safeguards, and by the way, you've known about this, the possibility of this, for a year, so if you buried your head in the sand and said, no, it won't happen, I'm going to continue to sell solely on TikTok, then again,
you gambled and lost.
You gambled and lost. That is your bed. You made it. You lie in it. You should have been branching out to other platforms as a backstop against this kind of thing happening. So I have minimal, like I say, minimal sympathy in that regard. I think where this will go, honestly, I really don't know. I think from the way that Meta's share price has basically been quite static over the last couple of weeks, I can't see this whole thing not getting reversed. Generally, the market seems to be correct about most. I mean, the market was correct about Trump being re-elected. It was correct. I imagine it will likely be correct about this. But I do find it quite a puzzling sort of scenario, seeing as though Donald Trump was, he himself is a China hawk. He was the one who first floated the idea of getting the platform effectively nixed in the US. Back then, largely because it was considered a hotbed of liberal rhetoric and propaganda, so to speak. Now we're into this somewhat flawed free speech and censorship argument, and he and the populist right want to be bastions of unfettered free speech. Seems to be blowing like a windsock in the other direction because that's kind of what suits him. But I think it's anyone's guess, honestly.
I really think, and to just put not too fine of a point on it, but I think he's playing towards his unpredictability and trying to see potentially what China can come to the table with in order to get this reversed, which is not, it's dastardly, but I can't even say it's a bad idea. Because, you start with, they're just doing it and they're taking Western data, period. And if he could figure out some way to go, listen, at least give us something for it. Because, my hope would be, and I know I'm going to be wrong here, but then my hope would be that folks would wise up and get off the platform. Not going to happen. There's reasons, there's reasons why it was so popular. And in terms of that demographic with the type of money that it had to spend, right? That cohort, that tranche of people to market to. I completely understand all of that, but there's certain things, man, that like when you know that this is being collected and hoovered up by somebody that has that sort of stance on you as a nation, you gotta put your foot down.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's an interesting one because, and thinking out loud, hypothetically, were he to use this whole thing as some sort of, and I think it would be a little bit, I think it would be a bit of an asymmetric thing, but were you to use it as a bargaining chip, as to say, leave Taiwan alone, then something that could actually be a masterstroke. My kind of problem with, I think, the negotiating tactics that he likes to employ specifically are that they are not even so much cloak and dagger, they are just sort of erratic and I think impulsive, and I don't think it works well in government or for government, where, because there's so much less diplomacy and diplomatic behavior that comes from him and his former administration and the people that he chooses.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it's the sort of thing that it raises it throws a lot of uncertainty in there. It raises a lot of anxiety. It's interesting. I think somebody that I follow from an investing sort of perspective has said, like, look, the next at least year is going to be very volatile, lots of quite sharp up and down days. We have just come out of a period of very, very, like, bizarrely, unprecedentedly low volatility in the market. It's going to get very, very choppy the next 12 months. And I think that is due in part to a reversion to the mean, but also because actually there's going to be an awful lot of, we don't really know which way that anything is going to go
it's
here,
gonna
just
go.
because
Yeah.
the whole thing is so unpredictable.
Sure.
But hey, that seems about as good a place to leave things. So this has been shorter than we had last time. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have not seen our interview with Jose Toledo from last week, please do go have a look at that. That was a very interesting conversation that we had there. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do. Or if you're listening to us on Spotify, give us a follow. Like the video too, and please, you've all been very, very naughty. All of our subscribers. I've seen minimal comments. Please, comments.
There's wild
Tell us
shit
what
that
you
we
think.
say. Exactly. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call us out
Yeah.
on anything you think we're off base on.
Some of it's hot takes, and I fully realize, and I don't care. Let's go.
So social media and the comments section thrives on controversy, but we'll leave it there, and we will see you again next week. Until then, please do stay cyber safe. And the little doggy will say bye bye.
Oh, adios, adios, Beretta.